Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm Michael Reynolds, your host, independent financial advisor, and owner of Elevation Financial. Welcome to Facebook and YouTube Live, the green room before we hit the music, kick off the podcast recording. Happy to have you with me today. We're going to talk about PPP loan forgiveness. Should be a short, direct episode. I want to give you kind of an update on what the status is of PPP loan forgiveness, specifically how it affects most of my clients, which are small and micro business owners. And we're going to talk about briefly talk about the simplified forgiveness form and what's been happening with it. So with that, let's get started. By the way, this time I think my audio is better. Last 2 weeks, my audio was terrible because I didn't have the right connection set. So I double checked it. So my audio should be coming through much better. Let's get started. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, independent financial advisor and owner of Elevation Financial. Thanks for joining me today. Glad you are with me for this podcast episode. We're going to talk PPP loan forgiveness briefly, very briefly. Going to be a really short episode, really short and simple, but I want to take this time to give you a little bit of an update on PPP loan forgiveness. So this episode is really specifically for my business owners out there, most specifically solopreneurs or micro business owners. Maybe it's just you, maybe it's you and a handful of team members. Those are really the business owners I work with most closely, is those single and micro business owners. So we're going to talk a little about, Jennifer says we lost some sound. Sorry about that, Jennifer. We'll see if we can get it back. So I'll check my sound settings. Looks like I'm good. So maybe it's not me. So anyway, by the way, for those listening on audio on the podcast, I do this via Facebook Live, as you know. So I've got some feedback there that says we lost sound. Hopefully it's just a glitch on Jennifer's end. So sorry about that. Hopefully it's still coming through. So we're going to talk PPP loan forgiveness. So again, most of the people I work with are solo or micro business owners, a handful of team members, and many of them did apply for PPP loans. If you recall, the PPP loans was the personal or the Paycheck Protection program. It was designed in the beginning of COVID, or during the kind of the big part of COVID, which are still in, obviously. But when COVID happened, businesses were in trouble. Things shut down. It was difficult for businesses to make money, obviously, because they were not making or not seeing customers. A lot of things kind of ground to a halt. So the PPP program was designed to help keep people employed. Could be help keeping your employees employed or keeping you employed as the business owner of your own business. So let's talk a little bit about where we are today. So the PPP program is still a little bit controversial. A lot of people still have opinions about it. I have opinions about it as well. And my opinion is it's not the worst program in the world. It's actually been, for all its flaws, it's been fairly decent and fairly helpful to a lot of business owners and businesses and the people that work in those businesses in general. So my opinion is that while it's not perfect, certainly room for improvement, lots of loopholes that people exploited. In general, most of the time I have heard that it has been extremely helpful to small business. So with that, the big question on so many people's minds has been, what about forgiveness? Is forgiveness actually going to happen? Is it going to actually, is my loan actually going to get forgiven? I don't trust the government. All this stuff is kind of going around in our minds, and rightfully so, because it's a unheard of program. It's new. It's unprecedented. It's sort of mysterious, and we don't really know much about it because it was sort of hastily thrown together, to be quite blunt. So what do we know so far? So we know that a lot of money has been given out, on the exact figure, but billions have been given out in PPP assistance. Now businesses are wondering, or at least many are wondering, what to do. Do I go ahead and apply for forgiveness? Things are up in the air with the election and Congress, and what am I supposed to do? I'm going to give you a couple options here. So I'll talk about the less common option for my listeners first, because this is for bigger companies, bigger businesses that took out more than $50,000. If you are a business that took out more than that, there is a lot of consensus right now that it's best to hold off a little bit longer before applying for forgiveness. The reason is there is still a lot of expectation. Again, we can't predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball, but there's expectation that there will be simplification coming for those larger loan amounts. There'll be either some sort of blanket forgiveness under a certain amount. There will be simplified application processes. The process will be simplified. Now that we're past the election, we're seeing that, or we're expecting that stimulus talks will kind of reopen, that legislation will be processed that addresses the forgiveness aspect of PPP. Perhaps more funding will be allocated. We don't know what's going to happen, but these are all sort of things in flux right now. So the general consensus is if you have borrowed more than $50,000 as a PPP loan and received more than that, it's best to probably wait a little bit longer until we see exactly how it's going to play out in terms of the process for forgiveness. Definitely stay in touch with your lender, stay in touch with your bank and see what they're doing. But the lenders that I'm aware of are still saying, hey, hold off. We are not processing forgiveness yet because we're also going to wait and see what legislation occurs and what the government's going to do, quite frankly, about forgiveness. So that's kind of the $50,000 and up. If you borrowed less than $50,000, if your PPP loan amount was less than $50,000, a lot of times it's going to make a lot of sense to go ahead and apply because there is a new simplified form out specifically for loan amounts less than $50,000. And I will tell you, I have firsthand knowledge of businesses receiving forgiveness letters and receiving direct, clear, official confirmation after applying that the PPP loan has been forgiven. It's a done deal. It's tied off neatly. The certified forgiveness paperwork has been issued. You're supposed to keep that on file for, I believe, 6 years. So you want to make sure you keep that certification and keep that documentation readily available. But again, I have firsthand knowledge of businesses that I've worked with that received less than $50,000 in PPP funding, and they applied using the simplified form, and they received their documentation back, sometimes very quickly, saying this certifies that your PPP loan has been fully forgiven. So that is occurring. That has happened. It's very real. These loans are being forgiven. So if you borrowed less than $50,000, if your amount was less than that, there is a simplified form. It is specifically Form 3508S, and I'm going to put a link to it here below the video portion and in the show notes in the podcast portion as well, so you can link out to it. And Jennifer just popped in also with a note on Facebook saying she received confirmation of 100% forgiveness. Took about 3 weeks. Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate that feedback. It's good to hear more confirmation from other business owners that this forgiveness is actually occurring. So that's really good news. Really appreciate that feedback. A lot of people were just really concerned. They say, I'm not going to trust this program. It sounds too good to be true. And they didn't trust the process. And that's valid. I mean, I get why. I've always been pretty pro forgiveness, like it's actually going to happen. It seemed like it was a pretty cut and dry program, and I'm glad it seems to be turning out to be legitimately what was promised. So it's good to hear that we're seeing other stories of forgiveness occurring. So again, this form you're gonna look for, and for the video portion, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Obviously, if you're on audio, you won't be able to see this, but I'll kind of talk through it as well. So this is the application. Again, it's Form 3508S, and I'll have a link to it here with this episode. And as you can, if you're looking at video, you can see if you're downloading it and looking at yourself offline, you'll be able to see it's very simple. It's 2 pages. And page 2 is sort of not even necessary. It's sort of more of a demographic kind of survey, which is optional. So it's really 1 page. So you're going to fill out things like your business name, your address, your tax ID, your phone number, basically your contact information, basically. So at the top is contact information. Then the fields are your PPP loan number, and then your loan amount that you received, the date you received the loan, all this stuff's in your paperwork, number of employees at the time of loan application, and then number of employees at time of forgiveness. Ideally, this is going to be the same, especially if it's a single owner business, it'll just be you, so nothing's changed. If you received an EIDL loan, then you'll put that amount in there. Many people just did not receive an EIDL loan. They just did PPP. So you would put that as 0. And then the forgiveness amount, the total amount of your loan would go in forgiveness amount. And again, that's assuming that you meet all the criteria for how you use the money. And then the rest of the application is simply just initialing next to these kind of certified statements, like certifying that you used the loan accordingly as the guidelines state. You understand that you're sincerely and truthfully stating these things. A couple of the, or another few list of things that you're going to certify there with your initial. You're going to certify that you submit the proper documentation, that you understand the process. You're going to sign at the bottom. It's basically one page, and that's it. So that is the simplified form, and that is the one that you want to use if you received less than $50,000 as a PPP loan. And again, that's most of my listeners and my clients, because I work with solo and micro businesses most. So it's going to apply to most of the people that I talk to. So again, that is the loan application form, or the forgiveness form you're going to want to look for. You will fill that out, and then you will submit that to your lender. So your bank, whatever bank provided the funding for you, you're going to submit that to your bank. Usually it's via like an online secure messaging system or whatever their process is. And again, I'm receiving reports that it's a very quick process after submitting the forgiveness application. Jennifer, again, said she received it back in 3 weeks. Others have said, within a few days. So it's been a pretty simple process. So I'm pretty pleased that it's turned out to be kind of as promised. The process has been fairly decent and helpful to small business owners. So again, if you received more than 50,000, I would still hold off a bit longer until your lender says, yes, we're good to go, until Congress has more of an update for us. But under $50,000, businesses are submitting the simplified application, and they are receiving confirmation of total forgiveness. So with that, I want to give you an update on kind of the state of PPP forgiveness, kind of what's going on, so you kind of know what to expect and what the process looks like, and that may be helpful to you as you decide what your next step is. So with that, hopefully that's been helpful. I'm going to wrap it up there. Told you I'd keep it short and simple today. But if you have any follow-up questions on this, as always, reach out to me. My website is elevationfinancial.com. If you're a client, you know where to find me. If you're not a client, you can click on that big friendly button on the homepage that says book a complimentary money session. And I would be thrilled to chat with you. It's free. There's no obligation. I won't try to sell you anything, or I'll be happy to answer your questions, and we can just leave it at that. So whatever questions you have about this or anything else, definitely book a call and we will chat. So with that, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you being a listener as always. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. All right. That ends the podcast recording. Again, short and simple. A little bit of green room time here for a minute or so if anyone has any questions. I know we had a few live viewers during the broadcast. So if there are any other questions or comments, go ahead and pop them in chat in the next 3 seconds, because I'm going to wrap up here. But I want to thank Jennifer for popping in and giving feedback on how her process went. Sounds like she was very successful. So Jennifer, I'm glad you got success when you applied for forgiveness as well. And 3 weeks is pretty decent. It's a pretty good short time frame. So all right. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining me today. We will wrap up there. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.